Salutations, ladies and gentlemen, the Knife Raven here, back again with another video. And in today's video, following up with my last, I'll be taking a look at one of my old Victorinox knives. Now, I reviewed this, along with the other knife, about 2 years ago, maybe 1 year ago for the Excelsior, and, well, those videos have since been deleted, and I have not, well, made updated versions of them, and I figured it was about time that I do. Now I will be able to review the knife with a bit more experience, a bit more clarity, and a bit more articulation. So without further ado, today I'll be taking a look at one of my absolute favorite mini knives, and this is what I would like to say, the most useful thing you could ever put on your keychain besides your keys. And that is the Victorinox Minichamp. Now the Victorinox Minichamp in this particular version is the Alox model. It's a very, well, as you can probably see, a very pocket-friendly, very keychain-friendly knife. And unlike many other knives of this size, it has quite the impressive toolbox within. This is the exact same size as a Victorinox Classic. It's a little bit wider due to the extra tools, but in overall length, this will be very comparable to the Victorinox Classic, the Victorinox Signature, Victorinox Escort, Victorinox Manager, and other such designs. But without further ado, let's have a look at this. So, starting, you have, of course, the textured Alox handles, which are nice in the hand. You have a little thing here that says Victorinox. The knife is held together using, I believe, brass, although this might also be nickel silver. Can't quite tell. You have your keyring, which for most Victorinox knives I never really see the point, although lanyards might be a thing. For this, I absolutely could see the use with a keyring, as this is the ultimate keychain implement. But regardless, aside from that, again, you have Victorinox logo here. Yeah, it's still a very lightweight knife, despite having quite the wide array of tools. So, without further ado, let's take a look at them. Starting here, we have the signature Victorinox spearpoint blade, or pen blade, made of their very fine Swiss stainless. This knife comes out of the box sharp, sharpens up easily, and while it doesn't hold an edge as long as, say, a super steel would, it definitely gets the job done. It is mirror polished, although a little oily at the moment, and has a nail nick for ease of opening. Not very strong on the pull, but again, that's not to be expected with springs this size. Comfortable enough, and you can choke up under the tang here to prevent the blade from closing on your fingers. Again, it says right here, if my camera will actually focus, Victorinox, Swiss-made stainless, and there are no engravings or printings on this side. Yeah, just a very useful little Victorinox Swiss blade. And there we are. Next up, we have a very interesting tool that some may recognize and some may not. This is a bottle opener configuration. You can see the little lip down here for getting under a bottle cap. You also have your wire stripper right there, as well as a Phillips screwdriver, which is also magnetic. And I would definitely say that this is the highlight of this particular attachment, at least for me. But again, nice attachment to have, and it has quite a bit of use to it. And on this side, the last attachment we have is the oh-so-useful Victorinox scissors. Very simple in construction and usability, but they are very effective at what they are made for. And anyone who's ever used these can absolutely attest to the fact that they very much are deserving of a spot on almost every small Victorinox. So there you have it. There's that side. Moving on to this side. Now this is where all the fun stuff is. Starting with arguably the least interesting implement, we have a nail file, which, again, fairly coarse and would definitely do a good job of being a nail file, and I have certainly used it enough to attest to that. It also has a nail cleaner at the front, so if you have something under your nails, you can easily just get it out, which is another helpful thing to have. Some may say that this isn't the most useful attachment, but I think that it's nice to have. Next up, we have a very interesting little piece, and this is something that was quite nondescript. I believe this is called a scraper, and that is, again, quite an odd description, but it's a little blade, and I will take the royalties to say that this is a Wharncliffe profile. Some may argue that this would be a hawkbill or a peach pruner, but I would personally go with Wharncliffe, despite the slight curve in the edge. It has a very, very acute point with a very, very, very sharp tip, as is to be expected with many Wharncliffe profile knives. Just let me focus, there you are. You have a very, very, very elegant tip here, and the sharp edge underneath. I personally prefer this blade over the normal spear point, despite it being significantly smaller in both usable edge and overall belly. And despite this, I still very much enjoy the use of this blade. The shape is very appealing to me, and it is perfect for markings and making draw cuts, such as cutting tape or opening a box. So I very much appreciate this, and it's not something you will see in really any other Victorinox knife. So very nice to have. There is the scraper. Next up, we have the attachment I probably would use the least, an orange peeler. To some, this might almost look like a gut hook, although obviously this is far, far too small for that kind of thing, unless, of course, you are dressing shrews. And this is, again, a very odd attachment. It has a very sharp tip right here, if you could even call it that, and you've got a bit of an edge down there. It's a very aggressive grind. I'd almost argue that that's some kind of hollow type grind there. But again, this is marketed as an orange peeler, and it definitely would work at such a task, but I personally don't eat very many oranges. I don't really enjoy the fruit, and so I don't really have a use for this. I suppose you could use it for other things, such as, again, if you have very small game, you could use this as sort of a tool to unzip your catch, but again, for me, I don't see too much of a use for this besides just having a little pick. But again, it's nice to have. It's definitely on the more obscure side, but I still appreciate having it, and it is something that you won't see on really any other Victorinox, except maybe the Executive. Now, we have two very interesting things. We have a flathead screwdriver, which is typical on most small Victorinox, but also we have something even more interesting. We have a little ruler. Now, unfortunately, it does not continue on the other side, but it seems that there is indeed a very small, admittedly, little ruler. And I definitely think that this does have some use, although you will have to be careful with your measurements. It only goes so far, but here I'll just bring up a little comparison for you. Speaking of which, I should probably measure this knife anyway. This knife comes in at just about 2¼ inches, and with the longest of the blades, you will be looking at an overall length of just a little under 4 inches, so this is a very, very small knife again. Blade length, of course, is overall about just a little over, I should say, 1½, and the usable cutting edge is just a bit over 1¼ So again, this should be, without saying, this is a UK legal knife. But anyway, back to the little ruler that is featured on this knife, if I can just get it out. Here you are. It does seem to be measuring in centimeters, which some may dislike. But again, you can see here that there, if I can actually line it up, you have your little ruler here. It only goes up so far, but again, better than having no ruler. But that is a very interesting little thing, regardless. And last but certainly not least, we have the strangest attachment I have ever seen on a Victorinox, and the most obscure, hands down. We have the Cuticle Pusher. Now, I personally, I suppose this has a use, but to me, it just seems a bit on the unnecessary side. Redundant, if you will. And I guess you could use it for just general, well, poking work, but I don't really see the use in it all that much. To me, it just seems like one of those attachments that they add as a means of, say, boosting the value of the knife, but at the same time not contributing to it all that much. I suppose there will be jobs that, again, are very obscure that when I have this knife on me, I will be glad that it came with this strange little implement, because I will need it for whatever reason. But for the most part, I personally think that the idea of a cuticle pusher for most people is not going to be a particularly high-value item. But regardless, it's there for those who want it, or for those who want to use it for other reasons. But anyway, yes, there you are. That is the Victorinox Alox Minichamp. I should say that this does come in the typical celluloid material, and if you choose that, you also get I believe, a pen on this side and tweezers on this side. But in the process, the handles are a lot thicker, as they have to accommodate the attachments, or the additions, I should say, whereas the Alox are very, very, very skinny and make for a much smaller knife, and despite being metal, they are probably a bit lighter too. But anyway, there you are. There is the Victorinox Alox Minichamp, and I definitely think that this is overlooked compared to, say, the Classic or the Signature. I see the appeal of those, as they are, again, a little bit thinner, and they definitely are a bit easier to keep track of, as there are a lot of attachments for this small knife, and some might just find it a bit of a nuisance to be digging around through all of their attachments to find something. And the Classic, well, that wouldn't be an issue. But I certainly think that this should be considered a bit more, as even if you aren't going to be using a cuticle pusher or an orange peeler, having the extra blade, the nail file, which again most would include already, but some wouldn't, as well as the little ruler and the bottle opener with the wire stripper and the screwdriver, I think that this is definitely worth considering. And while, again, there are those who would find no use in this and would rather just take a Classic, as it is also considerably cheaper, I definitely could see that. But, again, if you want a bit of extra variety and a bit more function in your keychain-sized knife, this is certainly something you should look into, as this definitely does feature an impressive array of tools, and even if you aren't going to use all of them every day, perhaps when something comes along where you will want a little ruler that measures in centimeters, or a cuticle pusher, or an orange peeler, well, you'll be happy to know that you have it. And, well, I think that's worth celebrating. So thank you very much for watching. I personally would recommend this knife. It's a bit obscure, but I have enjoyed it. Again, the scissors and the scraper blade get the most use, probably followed by this blade and the nail file. But again, I think that I've used every implement here at least once or twice. Some, again, less than others, but definitely worth considering, and I just like the Alox. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This has been the Victorinox Alox Minichamp, and this is the Knife Raven, as always, signing off. Goodbye.